What happens when the owner of a warehouse chain goes undercover and finds out his employees have been hiding more than just inventory issues? Russell Nolan stood in the back corner of his office, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the monthly numbers. Something wasn't adding up. Warehouse 16 had seen a steady decline in output over the past 6 months, just slow enough not to raise alarms, but it was there. And the complaints were starting to roll in. Orders were delayed, packages mislabeled, and more than once customers claimed boxes arrived half-opened. He rubbed his jaw. "I'm done listening to filtered reports," he muttered. Russell had bought the warehouse chain 7 years ago, back when it had only 5 locations, all struggling. He'd turned it around, expanded to 20 warehouses, and had built a solid reputation. He trusted his district managers, at least he thought he did, but something about Warehouse 16 felt off. The manager, Casey, always had an excuse. Short on staff, holiday rush, new hires still learning. Russell had heard enough. He called in his assistant and told her what he was doing. "Are you serious?" she asked, half shocked. "You're going in undercover," he nodded. "Just for a couple days, as a temp. I want to see it with my own eyes." They put together a strong backstory. He'd be Ray, a new hire from the temp agency, just transferred in from out of state. He'd had a beard grown out over the last few weeks, wore thick glasses, changed his posture, voice slightly deeper. He even added a scar prosthetic on his jawline. No one at Warehouse 16 had ever met the CEO in person. It was one of the newest locations, and with 20 sites, personal visits had become rare. That's how he liked it until now. On Monday morning, Ray stood in the break room of Warehouse 16, clutching a paper cup of burnt coffee. The place looked tired. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, boxes were stacked too high. A few workers sat silently scrolling their phones, no music, no chatter. A woman in a faded hoodie approached him. "You the new guy?" "Yeah, Ray," he said, offering a hand. She shook it, unenthused. "Jesse, I'll show you the ropes." "Don't expect much help. We're down 5 people this week." "5?" he asked. She sighed. 2 quit, 1 called in sick, 1's on leave, and the last got fired for yelling at a driver. Casey hasn't replaced any of them. Russell kept his expression neutral. "Got it." He was put on box sorting. It was mindless, repetitive, and physically demanding. After 2 hours, his lower back already felt it. Jesse worked fast, barely stopping for water. He noticed others dragging, slow, tension in the air. On his lunch break, Russell sat outside with Jesse. "This place always like this?" he asked casually. She looked around, then leaned in. "Worse lately. Casey barely shows up. When he does, he's barking orders from the office. No support. We're all exhausted." "Why don't people speak up?" Jesse laughed bitterly. "You think anyone listens?" Last month, Danny spoke up about safety issues. Next thing you know, he's not scheduled anymore. He filed that away. That afternoon, while packing boxes, Russell noticed a young man, tall, thin, maybe early 20s, working a few aisles over. He was moving fast, too fast. Sweat soaked through his shirt. Every few seconds he scanned the area like he was being watched. Russell stepped closer. "Hey man, take it easy. You're gonna overheat." The kid didn't slow down. "Can't, behind today." "Casey said if I miss another quota, I'm out." "You serious?" Before he could answer, the kid stumbled, caught himself on a crate, but then collapsed to the floor. Hey, Russell dropped to his knees, shaking his shoulder. "Someone call for help." A few workers rushed over. Jesse was already dialing 911. The boy's name was Caleb. He was barely conscious, murmuring something about "can't afford to lose this job." Russell stayed by his side until the ambulance came. Later that night, Russell sat in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling. His stomach turned. This wasn't just bad management. This was dangerous, and it was happening under his name. He reached for his phone and called his assistant. "I'm staying another day," he said. "I've seen enough to know something's really wrong." He hung up and sat in silence. The image of Caleb hitting the floor burned into his mind. Tomorrow, he'd confront Casey. But first, he had to see how deep this went. Russell returned to the warehouse the next morning just before sunrise. The air outside was cold and sharp, but inside, the heat already felt oppressive. A sour mix of dust, sweat, and stale cardboard hung in the air. The night crew was clocking out as the day shift slowly trickled in. He spotted Jessie near the loading dock, yawning as she adjusted a wrist brace. "You all right?" he asked, stepping beside her. "Heard it lifting a crate yesterday. Nothing new," she said without looking at him. "You get it checked." "No time," she muttered. "Besides, if I leave the floor, everything stacks up. Nobody's covering for anyone around here." A forklift beeped in the distance, and a pallet slammed into the floor with a dull thud. Russell turned when he heard the office door creak open. Casey walked onto the warehouse floor, dressed in a wrinkled polo and slacks that didn't quite fit. He didn't greet anyone, just walked straight to a clipboard hanging near the door, scanned it, and disappeared again. "Does he ever actually do anything?" Russell asked quietly. Jessie didn't answer. She just walked away. Russell decided to follow Casey's path. He waited a minute, then headed toward the office. Through the cracked blinds, he saw Casey with his feet up on the desk, scrolling on his phone, earbuds in. A half-eaten sandwich sat on a stack of unopened employee time cards. Russell knocked on the doorframe. Casey didn't look up. "Yeah, I'm Ray, new temp." Casey finally noticed him. "Right, what do you want?" Was hoping to get a better idea of my tasks today. There wasn't much direction yesterday. Casey shoved the earbuds out and sighed heavily. "You sort what's coming in, load what's going out. If it's not labeled, label it. If it is, don't touch it. That enough direction?" Russell didn't move. "Anything I should know about safety protocols? I noticed some of the racks are unstable." Casey tossed his phone onto the desk. "Look, Ray, this isn't a damn seminar. You want to play warehouse cop, do it on your own time. We're short-staffed. I don't need temp workers giving me lectures." Russell gave a slow nod. "Understood." He turned and left the office. As he walked back to the floor, he caught sight of a woman he hadn't seen the day before. She was standing by the conveyor belt, giving instructions to two newer hires. Her voice was calm but firm. "If the barcode's smudged, don't guess, flag it. We've had too many misroutes this week." Russell approached. "Hi, Ray." She shook his hand. "Amanda, I'm shift lead." Or, "What's left of a shift lead? No one's actually confirmed titles in months. You seem to be the only one giving direction." "Someone has to," she said, lifting one of the misaligned boxes and showing the other two how to fix the tape seams. "Casey doesn't even know how the new scanners work. I've been training the new hires myself." Russell helped fix a jammed roller track while Amanda worked beside him. Her pace was fast but efficient, everything done with muscle memory. "You always this hands-on?" he asked. "I wasn't supposed to be," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "I was hired as a coordinator, but when two supervisors left, they never filled the roles. So now I'm shift lead, trainer, and sometimes janitor." "Why stay?" she hesitated. "My sister's in chemo. I can't afford a gap in pay." Russell didn't push further. He just nodded and kept working. Around noon, a driver from the courier company showed up to pick up the outgoing load. He stood by the dock, arms crossed, looking irritated. After 10 minutes, he shouted, "Is anyone responsible even working back here?" Amanda moved quickly. "We're a little behind, but I've got the pallets." The driver cut her off. "I've got 3 other stops and I'm not babysitting this circus." Before Amanda could respond, Casey arrived from the office, face flushed. Whoa, you don't talk to my staff like that," he barked. The driver stepped toward him. "Then get your house in order. I've been picking up from this site for weeks and it's always the same mess. One missed scan and my route's delayed." Casey jabbed a finger in Amanda's direction. "Talk to her. She's the one who keeps screwing up the pickup window." Amanda's hands curled into fists. "I've been handling everything because you don't show up until after the loading deadline." "That's enough," Casey snapped. "Back to your station." Russell's stomach twisted. He watched Amanda's face as she turned away, silent. Once the driver left, Russell followed Casey into the back hallway. "Was that necessary?" he asked flatly. Casey didn't even slow his pace. "You don't get it. You're a temp. You think I can let my staff mouth off in front of a partner?" She didn't mouth off. She was doing your job. Casey stopped. Listen, hero, you want to keep your temp gig, keep your head down. People like Amanda, they think they are owed something just because they work hard. This isn't a charity. Russell's jaw clenched. He stared for a moment without speaking, then walked away. Later that afternoon, a commotion broke out near the north end of the warehouse. Russell rushed over and found a worker older, maybe in his 50s, kneeling beside a spilled rack of boxes. His hand was bleeding and a stack of unsorted inventory had collapsed beside him. Amanda was already there, helping him up. What happened? Russell asked. Shelving gave out, the man said through gritted teeth. Tried to stop it from falling. There's no bracing on that row, Amanda muttered. I flagged it last week. No one did anything. Russell looked toward the office. No sign of Casey. I'll take him to urgent care, Amanda said. Someone needs to report this. I'll go with you, Russell said without hesitation. They signed out and drove in silence for a while. The older worker sat in the back seat, pressing a towel to his palm. At the clinic, while he was being seen, Amanda leaned against the wall outside the room. You're not like the other temps, she said. Russell looked at her. How do you mean, you actually care? Most temps don't last more than 2 shifts, but you ask questions, you listen. He didn't respond. She crossed her arms. Let me guess. You're not just some guy from a temp agency, are you? He met her eyes. Not here, not yet. Amanda stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. I hope when you are, you do something. Back at the warehouse, the injured man's shift was covered barely. The rest of the crew looked drained. Jesse had taken over a second station. One of the new hires was clearly flagging, barely keeping up. Russell spent the rest of the day running between packing and intake, trying to ease the pressure. By closing time, his shirt was soaked through. As workers clocked out, he stayed behind in the break room, alone. One light flickered above and the vending machine hummed softly. He took out his phone and dialed. Line up the HR director. Tomorrow morning, I'm pulling Casey off the floor. He paused. And tell legal to prepare a review of every safety report from the past year. He ended the call and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was negligence, and it was his name on every one of those paychecks. Russell arrived just after 6 the next morning, stepping through the side entrance without clocking in. He no longer needed to. His assistant had flown in overnight and was waiting in a rental car nearby, along with HR's regional director, a stone-faced woman named Carla, who had spent the last 12 hours combing through employee files, time cards, and internal complaints for Warehouse 16. By 7:30, the floor was already moving. Workers shuffled between stations, grabbing scanners, checking outbound loads. The tension was thicker than the day before. Word had spread about the injury. No one spoke about it directly, but their eyes said enough. Russell kept his hat on as he moved inside the locker room. He changed quickly into his usual black sport coat and buttoned down. No glasses, no beard. He didn't need the disguise anymore. At exactly 8, Casey strolled in through the front office door, coffee in hand, earbuds in, eyes on his phone. Russell stepped into the hallway and waited. Casey barely looked up until Russell was right in front of him. You're late, Russell said. Casey stopped mid-step, confused. Sorry, who are? Carla emerged from the hallway behind him, holding a file folder. I'm Russell Nolan. I own this company, Russell said, voice steady. You've been reporting to me every month, you just didn't know it. Casey's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Russell motioned toward the glass-walled office. We'll speak in there. Inside, Casey dropped into his chair. His eyes darted between the two of them, still trying to catch up. I've spent the last 2 days on your floor, Russell said. Undercover, I sorted boxes. I watched shipments go out late. I saw an employee collapse from exhaustion. I rode with another to urgent care after he was injured by a shelving unit you were already warned about. Casey shook his head. Look, I didn't know that rack was. Russell raised a hand. Don't. Amanda flagged it last week. You signed off on the maintenance report. Carla opened the folder and slid a printed copy across the desk. Casey didn't touch it. You've ignored safety violations, failed to log injury reports, and retaliated against employees who spoke up, Russell said. That's not a management style, that's negligence. I've been short-staffed, Casey said suddenly. Nobody wants to work anymore. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. You spend most of your shift in that chair, Carla replied. You haven't submitted a hiring request in over 2 months. You've declined temp support multiple times. And the last 3 exit interviews from this site all described the same issue. No leadership, no accountability. Casey sat back, face pale. You're done here, Russell said. Casey blinked. Wait, what? You're terminated effective immediately. You'll be escorted off the premises. We'll process your final paycheck and retrieve your badge later today. This is insane. I've run this place for a year. Exactly, said Russell, standing, and every day under your watch it got worse. Carla gestured toward the hallway. A security contractor waited quietly by the door. Casey stood slowly, still stunned, and followed him out without another word. Russell watched him go, then turned back to Carla. Let's get Amanda in here. 5 minutes later, Amanda entered the office, still in her warehouse vest. Her eyebrows lifted slightly when she saw who was waiting for her. You're Russell, she said quietly. I am, and I owe you an apology for letting this place run so far off track. She sat across from him cautiously. I came here to investigate a few inconsistencies, he continued. But what I found was a floor held together by workers like you. Without you, this warehouse would have ground to a halt. Amanda didn't say anything. You've been running 2 roles without the title or pay, Carla added. That ends today. Russell leaned forward. Effective immediately, I want you to step into the interim site lead role. You'll have full authority over scheduling, safety protocol enforcement, and staffing. You'll report directly to our regional ops director until we finalize the permanent structure. Amanda's eyes narrowed. You're serious? I don't hand out promotions lightly, Russell said, but you've earned this more than anyone else here. Amanda sat back slowly, processing. I'll need a replacement on the floor, someone I can train to take my station. We'll authorize 2 new hires, Carla said. And a part-time safety coordinator for the next 6 weeks. Amanda nodded. All right, I'll do it. Russell stood and offered his hand. She took it firmly. Don't let me regret this, he said. Don't worry, she replied. I've been waiting for this place to change. By mid-morning, the shift had taken on a different energy. Word of Casey's removal spread fast, but no one celebrated. Instead, people moved with a quiet urgency, as if waiting to see if things would really be different. Russell stayed on the floor, observing. Amanda met with each team, explaining what would change and what wouldn't. She didn't make promises, just clear expectations. Jesse passed by him near the sorting line, eyes tired but sharper than yesterday. You're really the owner? I am, she studied him. You actually gonna fix this place? I already started. She gave a short nod. Good. Then maybe I'll stick around. By early afternoon, Amanda had already shifted 2 underperforming stations and reassigned floor leads based on actual workload. She held a 15-minute safety briefing in the break room and walked every aisle with a clipboard, noting broken equipment and areas needing repair. Russell watched from the back, arms folded. It wasn't perfect, not yet. The crew was still behind on orders and morale didn't bounce back overnight. But there was something different in the way people moved. Less hesitation, more eye contact. Before leaving, Russell met Amanda near the loading dock. One of the first things I built this company on was trust, he said. Somewhere along the way, I let go of that. I trusted reports instead of people. Amanda didn't respond right away. She was watching 2 workers adjust a pallet placement. You can't fix everything in one day, she said finally, but you showed up. That's more than most do, he nodded. I'll be back in 2 weeks, he said. Not as a temp. Just someone who still gives a damn. Russell stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. The air smelled like warm wood and diesel. As he walked toward the waiting car, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, 3 more complaints in other locations. Similar patterns. Want to schedule follow-ups? Russell stared at the screen, then he typed back. Line up the next visit. I'm not done yet. 2 weeks later, Russell stepped onto the warehouse floor again, this time through the front door, in full view. There was no disguise now. Dressed in plain slacks and a rolled-up dress shirt, he moved through the entryway with quiet purpose. Employees glanced up from their stations, some pausing when they recognized him. No one said much, but there was a shift in the air, curiosity, maybe even guarded optimism. Amanda emerged from the intake section, clipboard in hand, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her pace was brisk, posture straighter than before. She didn't hesitate when she saw him. "Welcome back," she said as they shook hands. Russell glanced around the floor. "How's it been?" "A marathon," she replied, already walking him toward the rear of the warehouse. "We're still 2 people short, but we've stabilized the schedule. Injuries are down and order accuracy is trending up." He noticed the changes immediately. Where before the space felt stale and strained, now it was focused. The racks that had once leaned unevenly were now reinforced. A safety inspection checklist hung clearly visible near the dock. And the break room, glimpsed through the open door, had been cleaned and reorganized with a water cooler and 2 new fans mounted on the wall. Amanda handed him a printed report. "We've restructured shift starts to stagger by 15 minutes. That's helped with logjams at the scan-in station. Also, we're piloting a task rotation every 4 hours to reduce repetitive strain injuries." Jessie brought that idea up. She's been helping design it. "Good," Russell said. "I wanted to speak with her. She's on her 2nd shift today, volunteered to cover for Caleb." Russell raised an eyebrow. "How's he doing?" Amanda's tone softened slightly. "Recovering. Still not back yet. Doctor gave him a 2-week clearance, but he asked to come back part-time. HR's coordinating a graduated return." They reached the supervisor's office, no longer locked, no longer silent. Inside, new wall charts tracked metrics. A weekly feedback board was pinned beside the door, filled with anonymous suggestions in various handwriting. Russell turned to her. "Are they buying in?" Amanda gave a faint nod. "Mostly. A few still don't trust that it'll last." "Can't blame them." "I don't expect them to trust overnight," he said. "I expect them to see the difference." He stepped back out onto the floor and spotted a younger worker lifting a crate improperly. Before Russell could speak, another employee, taller, mid-30s, stepped in and corrected him without raising his voice. The 2 adjusted the load together and moved on. "Who's that?" Russell asked. Tony, new hire, military background, picked up the protocols fast. "Quiet but reliable." Russell made a mental note. They passed the loading dock where 2 outbound pallets were being scanned by a man with dark hair tied back and a headset around his neck. He barely noticed Russell, focused on the barcode placement. The scanner beeped twice, then he adjusted the tape and scanned again. "Name?" Russell asked. "Lewis, another new hire, started 4 days ago. He caught 2 mislabeled shipments on his 2nd shift." He nodded approvingly. "How's morale?" Amanda hesitated. "Better." "But everyone's still watching, waiting to see if it's real." Russell glanced toward the break room and gestured. "Can you gather the floor leads?" 10 minutes. 15 minutes later, they stood in the break room, Amanda, Jessie, Tony, Lewis, and a few others. Russell stood by the whiteboard, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. "I won't take long," he said. "I've seen enough to know this place is on the mend, but it doesn't stay that way unless the people in this room lead it forward." No one interrupted. Jessie leaned against the counter, wrist now wrapped with a firmer brace. Lewis stood with his arms crossed, posture alert. Tony kept his hands clasped behind him, military still in his stance. "You all have different reasons for being here," Russell continued. "Some of you stepped up when no one else would, others are just starting out, but the fact that this place hasn't collapsed, it's because of you." He turned to Jessie. "I heard you helped design the task rotation." She gave a small nod. "It's not perfect yet, but it's helping. You're not paid to be a process engineer, you did it anyway, that matters." He looked to Tony. "You're correcting posture and preventing injuries even when no one tells you to. That's leadership." Then to Lewis. You caught 2 shipment errors in a system you barely knew. That kind of attention to detail doesn't happen by accident." He took a breath. "This is how we build it back, not by dropping in once a year, not by reading reports from people who have never stepped on a line. From now on, every warehouse site will be visited quarterly, not by executives, by me. That got their attention. I'll spend a shift at each one, no warning, no filters, I'll see it the way you see it." Amanda folded her arms. "You think that'll be enough?" "No," Russell said. "But it's a start." He turned to Carla, who had entered quietly during the meeting. She handed him a small stack of printed letters. "These are formal recognitions," he said. "Not just thank yous. These go in your personnel files and they come with bonuses." He handed one to Amanda. "You're officially confirmed as site lead. We'll revisit your staffing budget in 60 days. Until then, you have my full backing," to Jesse. "You're being promoted to Quality Assurance Coordinator, part-time for now. You'll help develop injury prevention programs across all sites," to Lewis. "This is a recognition bonus. Keep doing what you're doing, and if you're interested in training others, we'll talk," to Tony. "You're being fast-tracked for team lead. Amanda will mentor you." He folded the remaining letters and set them aside. "The rest of the crew will be addressed individually." "But I wanted you to hear it first. You turned a failing site into one that's worth preserving." There was no applause, just a quiet weight in the room, something heavier than pride, a kind of earned belief. As the group filed out, Russell caught Amanda's arm gently. "Keep an eye on the feedback board. If it ever goes quiet, that's when we've got a problem." She nodded. "Understood." Afterward, Russell walked the perimeter of the warehouse alone, not inspecting, just seeing. The packing station now had foam mats to reduce fatigue. The intake scanner had a new guard rail. The oversized inventory had been moved to a properly braced row. And in the far corner where Caleb had collapsed, a first aid cabinet stood mounted and stocked. He paused there, hand on the metal handle. 2 weeks ago, this was the spot that changed everything. Not a boardroom, not a spreadsheet. Here where someone fell and no one in charge even noticed. Russell turned back toward the floor. Amanda was already reviewing the next shift schedule. Jesse was adjusting a scanner mount. Tony was reviewing labels with a newer worker. The work hadn't gotten easier, but it had gotten fairer. As he stepped outside, the air was cooler than before. Spring was fading fast. A delivery truck pulled up to the dock behind him, engine humming, tires crunching over gravel. Russell didn't look back. He didn't need to. The right people were finally in charge.